My name is Avery Collins. I'm 35 years old, and yesterday, I learned I'm not invited to my sister's wedding. I found out the way most betrayals break these days through a glowing screen. A photo, her in white satin, smiling beneath a caption that said, "Forever After." Everyone liked it. Everyone but me. My hands still smelled like sawdust when I realized the entire family had chosen silence over truth. They thought cutting me out would keep things quiet. But what they didn't know was silence can burn louder than fire. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because this isn't just about a wedding. It's about the moment you realize the people you trusted most were writing a story, and you were never meant to be in it. I used to believe family loyalty was carved into our bones, like the grain of the wood I sand every day. Turns out, some bloodlines splinter easier than pine. The morning I found out about the wedding, the sky over Seattle looked like brushed steel. I'd spent the day restoring crown molding in a 1907 Queen and chip paint, brittle plaster, a house worth saving. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications, little red circles that pulsed like open wounds. A picture stopped me cold. Sienna, my sister, dressed in white, veil glowing in soft light, hands clasped in front of her chest. The caption, "Final fitting for the big day. Hunter and Sienna forever after." I froze mid-swipe. My thumb hovered, my heartbeat slow but heavy. Under the photo, comments bloomed like ivy. "Can't wait for next month. It's going to be magical." Cousins, old friends, even our parents, everyone was tagged. Everyone except me. For 10 whole minutes. I stared at the screen, hoping I'd missed something. A text, a call, a mention. But there was nothing. Only silence dressed in celebration. When I called Mom, she answered like she'd been expecting it. "Sweetheart, I was just thinking about you," she said in that syrupy tone that always meant trouble. I cut her off. "When were you planning to tell me about Sienna's wedding?" Pause. A careful inhale. "Oh, you saw that?" My hand tightened around the phone. "Yeah, Mom. The internet's really efficient like that." She sighed, already annoyed. "Don't make this about you, Avery. You know how sensitive your sister is." The sentence hit like a hammer to the chest. That same old script. I could almost mouth the next line for her. "You've always been so independent," she continued. "Sienna thought you wouldn't come." That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet fracture, clean, final. When the call ended, I didn't scream or cry. I just unfollowed her. Mom, Dad, Sienna, every relative who smiled in those photos. Each tap felt like setting down a weight I'd carried too long. But this wasn't where it started. This was just where the story caught up with itself. The first memory that comes back is the dinner table, our small kitchen in Tacoma. Walls covered with yellow wallpaper and the smell of overcooked meatloaf. I was 10. Sienna was 7, still in pigtails, sticky with jam. Mom scooped mashed potatoes onto her plate first, then Dad's, then her own. When the bowl reached me, it was nearly empty. "Save some for your sister," Mom said, even though I hadn't taken any yet. Sienna giggled, eyes round and satisfied. I scraped the last thin smear onto my plate and smiled like it didn't matter. It did. I didn't know it back then, but that moment would teach me how to shrink quietly. At 12, I brought home a blue ribbon from the regional science fair, hand-built a small model bridge that could hold 50 pounds. I thought maybe this time, they'd notice. Mom clapped twice, distracted. "That's nice, honey." Dad nodded without looking up from his paper. But when Sienna got third place in a spelling bee 2 weeks later, they took her out for ice cream, balloons in hand, smiling for photos I still remember. Even then, I didn't hate her. She was sunshine, charming, fragile, a chaos people forgave easily. I was the nail that held things together, invisible until it rusted. High school blurred into long shifts at the hardware store, saving for college. I got into the University of Washington's engineering program on a scholarship. Mom said, "Of course you did." No hug, no celebration. Just that like success was my job, not my dream. When Sienna's first boyfriend broke her heart, I was the one she called, sobbing at 2 a.m. I drove an hour to pick her up from some parking lot. Sat with her under the buzzing lights of a gas station until she could breathe again. She said, "You're the only one who never leaves me." I believed her. Maybe that was my first real mistake. College turned into long nights and longer summers working construction. Every paycheck, I mailed $50 home. For groceries, Mom said. I didn't ask questions. That's what responsible daughters did. Years later, I found out the money had covered Sienna's dance lessons. Christmas that year, she got a new iPod. I got socks. I swallowed it, but it carved deeper than I thought. After graduation, I built my own business restoring historic homes. Sweat, grit, and endless paperwork. Clients loved my precision, my steadiness. You're the kind of person people can depend on, they said. I smiled because that was the only compliment I knew how to accept. Then came Sienna's big dream. A cafe of my own. She called me one night, voice trembling between hope and fear. The bank won't approve me alone, but if you co-sign just until I get it running. I hesitated. The word no felt foreign. So I said yes. $18,500 later. Sienna's Garden Cafe opened on Main Street. Mason jars. Chalkboard menus. Latte art. She posted everything online: smiles, cappuccinos, endless hashtags. 9 months later, the doors closed. When the landlord called me about unpaid rent, I realized I'd been left holding the debt. Sienna was taking time for her mental health. Mom said, "Don't bring it up, Avery. She's fragile." I was fragile too, but nobody noticed cracks in the concrete. I paid off her loan in 14 months, every check another piece of my future gone. And when it was finally done, I didn't even get a thank you card. Just a text, "You're the best. I owe you big time." She never did. By then, I'd stopped asking for fairness. I just wanted peace. That's when Mom called again. 5 years ago, her voice soaked in guilt and sweetness. "Sweetheart, the mortgage in Tacoma is behind. Just a few months. If you can help us until we get back on track." I sent $1,250 a month. Every month. No questions. It felt good, like I was keeping the family together. Except, I wasn't. I didn't know it then, but that money wasn't for the mortgage. It was for a home equity line of credit they'd opened, claiming Sienna lived there. A loan for $210,000. Signed by Mom. And Sienna. Paid quietly by me. Back then, I just thought I was being helpful. I didn't realize I was financing their secrets. I'll never forget one summer evening, sanding window frames in my own craftsman house. When I caught a reflection in the glass, my face lined with exhaustion, my hands cracked from work. Behind me, the sunset spilled through the stained glass, scattering red and gold across the walls. For a second, I imagined the house breathing around me, alive again, solid, and I thought, if I can rebuild this, maybe I can rebuild them. But families aren't houses. You can't reinforce people who refuse to hold weight. I didn't know it yet, but everything I'd fixed for them was about to collapse back on me. There's this photo on my mother's mantle, our family standing in front of the Victorian house in Tacoma. I must have been around 15. Sienna's got frosting on her nose from the birthday cake. Dad's smiling like the world's fine. Mom's hand is on Sienna's shoulder, not mine. Even back then, I noticed her nails perfect, polished, digging in just enough to make Sienna stay still for the camera. I remember wondering what it would feel like to have that same hand resting on my shoulder for once. That photo still sits there. Same frame, same lie. I used to visit on weekends back when the house still smelled like cinnamon and dust. The living room was filled with antiques we couldn't afford to restore. Mom liked to say, "A home is only as strong as its memories." I never told her most of ours felt like cracks in the plaster, thin, hidden, ready to crumble if you pressed too hard. Dad spent most days in the garage, half buried under his Chevelle. He said the car was almost there. He'd been saying that for 20 years. I think it was easier for him to fix engines than people. The air in there always carried the metallic sting of oil and the soft hiss of a welding torch. Sometimes, I'd stand in the doorway, hoping he'd look up. He rarely did. The day I bought my own house in Queen Anne, Mom visited once. She brought a pie from the store, still cold in the middle, and inspected every corner like she was appraising it. "It's quaint," she said finally. "I rebuilt half of it myself," I answered. She nodded, distracted. "You should invite Sienna to stay a weekend. She could use a break." "From what?" I almost asked. From not working? From her mistakes I'd paid for? But I swallowed it. That night, after she left, I opened a bottle of red wine and stood in the empty kitchen. The house creaked around me like it was adjusting to its new owner. The air smelled of varnish and rain. For the first time, I felt proud and completely alone. Years blurred into routine. I drive down to Tacoma for holidays, bring gifts for the kids' art sets, Lego kits while Mom handed Sienna envelopes of cash. Just a little help, she'd whisper. One Thanksgiving, I overheard them in the kitchen while washing dishes. She doesn't need money, Mom said. Avery always lands on her feet. Sienna's voice, soft and guilty. Yeah, because she never stops running. They laughed. I dried my hands, stared at my reflection in the window, and thought maybe they were right. That night, I slept on the pull-out couch. At dawn, when I woke, the light poured through the stained glass and cut across my face like colored scars. 2 years before the wedding, the cafe debt was already a ghost I couldn't exorcise. I was juggling renovation projects across Seattle, barely sleeping. Sienna called crying, said Derek. Her ex wasn't paying child support. I just need a few thousand to hold me over until tax season. She begged. I wired it. She thanked me with emojis and radio silence. A week later, I saw her post pictures from Sedona. Self-care trip, the caption read. My chest went cold. When I mentioned it to Mom, she snapped. You don't know what it's like raising kids alone. I'm not the one raising them, I said. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. You used to be kinder. Maybe I had been, but kindness without boundaries is just self-destruction dressed nicely. One December, during a snowstorm, the power went out at my place. I lit candles, wrapped myself in a blanket, and for the first time in years, I let myself think about what I actually wanted, not what everyone else needed. Peace. That was it. Just peace. The next morning, I stood by the window, watched flakes drift past the stained glass. The colors shifted with every movement: amber, crimson, indigo. I thought about all the things I'd restored that weren't mine. Houses, loans, people. If I could just stop fixing for once, maybe I could fix myself. I didn't know that in 6 months, I'd be forced to test that theory. Spring came early that year. The cherry trees bloomed along Queen Anne Avenue, petals catching in the gutters. I was finishing the Buchanan restoration. Sanded floors, repaired joists, a century-old staircase that fought me for every nail. My hands were raw, but I felt grounded. Work always made sense, would never lied. That's when I got the call from Tess. You seeing this? She asked. Seeing what? Instagram. Sienna's engagement. Like official. There's even a countdown. My stomach tightened. When? June. Willowmere Estate. Fancy stuff. I didn't even know she was engaged. I hung up before my voice could shake. 2 weeks later, Mom called about the mortgage. She said the payment notice looked strange, that the bank had changed the mailing address. I offered to call the bank myself, but she told me not to bother. We've got it handled, she said. Something about her tone, it wasn't defensive. It was careful, like someone stepping across thin ice. I didn't push. I was tired of being suspicious of people I loved. But that night, I dreamed of the Victorian house again, the one from the photo. Only this time, the stained glass windows were shattered, the inside hollowed out. I stood outside holding a hammer, unable to decide whether to fix it or walk away. A few months later, I visited Tacoma for Maya's birthday. She ran to me yelling, Aunt Avery, arms sticky with frosting, hair tangled from playing tag. I lifted her, inhaled that sweet sour mix of sugar and kid sweat and thought, she's worth it. Then Hunter appeared. Expensive watch, polished smile. He shook my hand like I was a business deal. So, you're the sister, he said, grin not reaching his eyes. The one and only, I replied. He laughed, short and sharp. I've heard a lot about you. Same. We both knew we were lying. Sienna floated in, glowing, talking about floral arrangements and guest lists. We're keeping it small, she said, eyes darting toward Mom. Intimate. Mom nodded quickly. Family only. The words tasted like metal in my mouth. I asked, am I family? Nobody answered. That night, I left early. Outside, the rain came down hard, cold against my skin. The Victorian's porch light flickered as I stepped off the stoop. Behind me, I could hear laughter through the walls. My family's, muffled but unmistakable. Driving back to Seattle, windshield wipers struggling. I realized something. Every mile I put between us felt like oxygen. But guilt is a tricky parasite. It doesn't die just because you starve it. Even when I started to believe I could live without them, part of me still waited for an apology that would never come. The last time I saw all of them before the wedding announcement was Easter Sunday. Sienna wore pastel blue. Mom beamed beside her. Dad stood at the grill, pretending not to hear the tension around him. Hunter kept checking his phone. When it was time for group photos, Mom positioned everyone carefully. Sienna in the middle, she said. Hunter next to her. Robert, lean in a little. Perfect. I waited for her to say my name. She didn't. Do you want me in or out? I asked finally. She blinked, startled. Oh sure, sweetie. Maybe just the four of you first. I stepped back. Watched the flash go off. The family portrait without me. That was the last holiday I attended. After that, calls went unanswered. Texts left unread. The space between us stretched into something unrecognizable. Then came that June morning. My work boots kicked off, my phone buzzing with notifications, and Sienna's smiling face under a veil. That's how I learned what I meant to them. A ghost. Useful when needed. Invisible when not. And what none of them knew, not Mom, not Sienna, not even Dad hiding behind his Chevelle, was that ghosts sometimes come back with receipts. The weeks after that discovery felt like moving through fog, everything muffled, but every sound that did reach me hit like a hammer. The first phone call came 2 days later. Mom, again. I hope you're not sulking, she said, voice syrupy. Like I was 10. I'm not sulking, I said. I'm confused. Don't be dramatic, Avery. You're always so intense. Intense. That word again. In our family, intense meant too much, too honest, too unwilling to play along. I swallowed hard. So, I'm really not invited? She hesitated. Sienna thought it would be awkward. Hunter doesn't understand you. He thinks family should be closer. Closer? I repeated. I sent you $75,000 over 5 years. That close enough for him? Silence crackled through the line like static. Money isn't everything, she snapped, and hung up. That was the first time I realized she wasn't just protecting Sienna. She was protecting the illusion, the image of a perfect family neatly staged. No messy truths. I didn't talk to anyone for 3 days. Work kept me upright. Sanding floors, scraping paint, aligning panels measured things that stayed where you put them. But the quiet had teeth. On the 4th day, Tess slid into my booth at Harbor and Hearth, a latte in one hand, phone in the other. You look like a ghost, she said. I feel like one. She turned the phone toward me. You're gonna want to see this. It was a picture, Hunter. Arm wrapped around another woman outside downtown lounge. The same smirk he wore at Maya's birthday. The timestamp. Last night. Who's she? Tess asked. Amber, I said. The venue coordinator. I'd seen her tagged in posts about Willowmere Estate. Tess's eyebrows shot up. The guy's engaged. To your sister. I nodded. Yep. So, what are you gonna do? I stared at the photo. The old version of me the fixer would have called Mom, warned Sienna, rushed in to save everyone from the mess. But I was tired of being their cleanup crew. Nothing, I said. Nothing? They wanted me out of their story. Let them write their own ending. Tess leaned back, studying me. You're serious. Dead serious. She shook her head. You scare me sometimes. Good, I said. Maybe it's about time someone did. A week later, I drove to Tacoma anyway. I told myself it was to check on Dad. But really, I wanted answers. The garage door was open, the Chevelle hood up. The smell of gasoline hung heavy. He didn't look up when I walked in. You could have called, he said. I did. He wiped his hands on a rag. Your mother said you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm done. He paused, confused. Done with what? With pretending this family isn't built on lies. He froze, hands still. Avery. I found out about the wedding from the internet. Did you know? His silence was an answer. I took a step closer. Why didn't you say something? He sighed, eyes on the engine. Because your mother thought it was best. Best for who? For everyone. I laughed, sharp and cold. Everyone but me. He didn't defend her. He never did. He just reached for a wrench, as if tightening a bolt could fix what we'd become. The wedding rehearsal came 2 weeks later, and even though I wasn't invited, Tess happened to be catering coffee at the church. She texted me mid-afternoon, "You won't believe what I just heard." Apparently, Amber had slipped up in conversation with the florist, saying Hunter wanted to make sure the deed transfer goes through before the honeymoon. Deed transfer. My stomach dropped. To what? To which house? I called Tess immediately. Did she say what property? No, but she mentioned the Victorian. The air left my lungs. They were planning to use the wedding to move ownership. Maybe Mom's loan wasn't just about helping Sienna, it was about securing the house for Hunter. I drove home in a daze, headlights blurring through drizzle. That night, I pulled out every bank statement I'd kept, every transfer confirmation. Pages and pages of quiet proof. My proof. I laid them on the walnut table, one after another, until the surface disappeared under paper. My own little graveyard of sacrifices. That was the moment I decided I wouldn't scream, or beg, or warn. If they wanted a perfect family picture, I'd let them have it. And then I'd show them what it cost to frame it that way. The wedding day came faster than I expected. A Saturday in June, all sunlight and champagne. I didn't go. I poured myself coffee, sat by the stained glass window, and waited for the inevitable. By evening, my phone buzzed nonstop. Texts, calls. Then, a video, shaky footage from Willomere's ballroom. White roses, gold accents, guests shouting. Sienna's scream pierced through the noise. Hunter's voice followed raw, angry. Then the sound, a slap, loud enough to cut through everything. I dropped the phone. It hit the hardwood like a gunshot. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at it. My hands trembled, not from shock, but from something colder. Confirmation. The man she'd chosen over me had done what I'd been accused of for years, made a scene, drawn attention, ruined the illusion. The difference? He got caught on camera. Later that night, Mom called. Her voice was wrecked. Your sister's hurt. Please, Avery, come. I almost said yes. Reflex. Decades of conditioning. But then I remembered every unpaid loan, every quiet dismissal, every time she called me too much. I wasn't invited. I said evenly. It'd be rude to show up now. She sobbed. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Then I hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. But 3 nights later, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, Dad stood there, soaked from the rain. The porch light caught the lines in his face deeper. Older, maybe honest for once. Avery, he said, we need to talk. His voice cracked on the word we. Rain drummed against the porch roof, turning the night silver. Dad stood there holding a manila envelope against his chest like it was a confession he couldn't carry anymore. Come in, I said. My voice surprised me flat, not angry, just tired. He stepped inside, water pooling beneath his boots. The smell of wet denim and oil filled my hallway. When he finally looked up, his eyes were rimmed red. I didn't know where else to go. I motioned toward the table, the same walnut table where I'd laid out all my evidence. He hesitated before sitting, like the wood might judge him. We've been using your money, he started. Not for the mortgage, for something else. I waited. He slid the envelope across the table. Inside, bank statements, loan documents, foreclosure notices, the HELOC, the forged signatures, the house. I scanned the numbers, the dates. My name wasn't on any of it, but my money was in all of it. $1,250 every month, funneled into a debt I never owed. Who signed this? I asked, even though I already knew. Your mother, he said. And Sienna. She told the bank she was living with us. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling as if the plaster might answer. So you lied to a bank, and you let me fund it? He flinched. We thought we could fix it before you found out. You thought wrong. He rubbed his forehead, grease smearing into his skin. The bank's calling the balance. 70,000 still owed. They'll take the house. Something inside me went very still. Why tell me now? His eyes filled with tears he couldn't quite hide. Because I couldn't watch your mother lie anymore. Not after the wedding. The words landed like thunder. He knew, too knew how far they'd fallen. I stood, gathering the papers into a neat pile. You should have come sooner. I know. When he left, the night swallowed him again. I stood at the window watching rain wash down the glass, feeling the familiar ache of being the only adult in the room. But this time, I didn't feel pity. I felt purpose. The next morning, I called Tess. I need coffee and silence for an hour. I told her. She didn't ask questions. At Harbor and Hearth. I spread the documents across the corner table. Tess whistled low. Damn, that's a lot of zeros. I'm not paying it off, I said. Not this time. Good. So what's the plan? I'm going to make them tell the truth. Out loud. In front of someone who can't be manipulated. Who? Evelyn Grant. My aunt. Robert's older sister. The one woman in this family who'd never been fooled by Margaret's tears. Tess leaned in. You're really gonna drag this into daylight. I met her eyes. You can't clean mold in the dark. 2 days later, I drove to Tacoma again. Documents neatly arranged in a folder, the rain following me like a witness. The Victorian loomed ahead, paint peeling, porch sagging. The same house I'd been paying for all these years, and now it was rotting from the inside out. Mom opened the door in her robe, mascara smudged, voice brittle. Avery, this isn't a good time. It never is, I said, brushing past her. In the kitchen, the smell of cinnamon tried to mask the rot. Dad stood by the counter, eyes down. I know about the loan, I said. About the fake signatures. About the house. Mom's lips tightened. Your father shouldn't have said anything. So it's true? She sighed, exasperated. We did what we had to do for the kids. For Sienna. After what happened at the wedding. Don't. I cut in. Don't use her as your shield. You forged documents, Mom. Her voice rose sharp. We needed stability. I laughed once. Bitter. You needed someone to pay for your lies, and I was convenient. She pointed a trembling hand at me. You've always been so cold. You think you're better than us because you work with your hands. I think I'm honest, I said quietly. There's a difference. The kitchen went still. Even the old clock seemed to stop ticking. That night, I called Aunt Evelyn. She didn't sound surprised. I knew something was off, she said. Your mother came to me years ago asking for a notary contact. Do you still have it? I asked. I might. And if she used that contact to falsify a signature, that's a felony. The line went silent for a beat. Then she said, What do you want from me? Avery. I want the truth on record. Evelyn exhaled slowly. Then I'll be there. Bring your evidence. And bring your mother. The following afternoon, I received a text from Noah, my colleague at the construction firm. Got something you should see. He sent a link to a news article. Hunter Blake, real name, Adrian Barlow. Prior assault charges in Oregon. Record, sealed in 2017. My throat went dry. So it was true. The name change. The anger. The carefully rehearsed charm, it all fit. I forwarded the link to Tess. Her reply, Holy hell. Does Sienna know? She will, I typed back. That night, I sat alone at the table, the same one that had seen every version of me. The provider, the fixer, the fool. This time, it would see the truth teller. I gathered the bank records, the notary's name, the screenshots, the article about Hunter, and laid them in careful order. Proof stacked like bricks. Solid enough to rebuild a life on. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The city lights bled through the stained glass, painting my walls in fractured color. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt ready. The day I decided to face them, the air felt heavier than rain. Clouds hung low over Seattle, pressing against the skyline like a lid sealing a pot that was about to boil. I spent the morning arranging the evidence on my walnut, dining table, bank statements, screenshots, notarized documents, the article about Hunter's hidden past. Every page lined up edge to edge. I wanted it neat, clinical. Truth deserved order, even if the people facing it didn't. Aunt Evelyn arrived first, wearing her usual camel trench coat, hair pinned back tight. She scanned the papers, her mouth setting into a grim line. Margaret won't like this, she said. She doesn't have to, I replied. She just has to listen. The doorbell rang at 3:15, 15 minutes early. Classic Margaret move. Power play by punctuality. I opened the door. Mom stood there in a navy coat, pearls around her neck like armor. Sienna was beside her, pale, hair pulled into a loose bun, dark circles under her eyes. Dad trailed behind them, gaze on the floor, shoulders already sagging. Come in, I said. My voice didn't shake. They filed in, the air between us tightening like stretched wire. Aunt Evelyn poured coffee, but no one touched it. Mom broke the silence first. What is all this, Avery? Some kind of performance? No, I said softly. This is the truth. I slid the first document toward her. Home equity line of credit, $210,000. Opened 5 years ago. Signed by you and Sienna. Claimed she lived at the Tacoma address. Her hand hovered but didn't touch the paper. We've been over this. No, I interrupted. You lied to the bank, and you used my money to pay it. Sienna blinked, confusion rippling across her face. Wait, what money? I turned to her. Every month for 5 years, I sent Mom $1,250. She said it was to cover the mortgage. Sienna's lips parted. She told me you knew. That it was your idea. Mom's eyes flashed. Don't twist my words. I'm not twisting anything, Sienna said, voice trembling. You told me Avery wanted to help. You said the bank was. I said what I needed to say to keep this family together. Mom snapped. You wouldn't understand. I understand perfectly. I cut in. You used my sense of duty as your personal credit line. Evelyn leaned forward. Margaret, I checked the notary log for that loan. Your witness, Marilyn Strauss. She's an old friend of yours, isn't she? Mom's face drained of color. She confirmed you signed for Sienna when she wasn't present, Evelyn continued. That's fraud. The word hung in the room like smoke. Dad cleared his throat, voice cracking. Avery, your mother was desperate. After Derek left, the kids. Stop hiding behind the kids, I said. You two keep using them like shields. Maya and Theo deserve stability, not lies. Sienna stared at me, wide-eyed. You're saying I could go to jail for this? You signed a legal document, Sienna. That's what I'm saying. She shook her head. I didn't even know what I was signing. Exactly, I said quietly. You never do. Tears filled her eyes. Hunter said he'd handle the paperwork. He said it was just refinancing. I felt my jaw tighten. Hunter handled plenty, didn't he? Evelyn slid a printout across the table. He also handled changing his name after an assault charge in Oregon. Did you know that, Sienna? Sienna froze. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Mom whispered, that's not true. Evelyn's tone was flat. It's public record now. He was arrested in 2017 for domestic assault. Charges sealed after a plea deal. The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Only the ticking of the wall clock broke it, a slow, steady reminder of how long I'd been waiting for this. Sienna finally whispered. He said it was a misunderstanding. Men who hit their brides at their own weddings don't misunderstand much. I said. Mom slammed her hand on the table. Enough. You think you're so righteous, sitting there judging everyone. I'm not judging, I said. I'm documenting. I turned to Dad. You told me the bank is threatening foreclosure? He nodded. Yes. They're calling the full balance. Good, I said. Then we'll settle it with the property you tried to hide. I pulled out the deed transfer form Evelyn had prepared. The side lot in Tacoma. Sign it over. It'll cover part of what you owe me. Mom stared, horrified. You can't be serious. I am, I said. You took $82,000 from me. This won't make it right, but it'll make it fair. Evelyn slid the pen across the table. Dad picked it up first. His hand shook as he signed. Then he pushed it toward Mom. She hesitated, breathing hard. You'd really do this to your own parents? I met her eyes. You already did. She signed. The pen scratched like a knife. When it was done, the paper sat between us, a simple rectangle that changed everything. Sienna wiped her cheeks. Avery, I didn't know. I swear. I believe you, I said. But believing doesn't erase it. She nodded slowly, the weight of her choices finally sinking in. Mom's voice broke, barely a whisper. So that's it? You get your pound of flesh and walk away? I looked at the documents, then at her. No, I get peace. What you do with yours is up to you. Evelyn stood, gathering the papers. I'll file these today, she said quietly. As they left, the room seemed to exhale. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was earned. Dad paused at the door, rain pooling at his feet. I'm sorry, kiddo, he said. I know, I replied. Now go fix something real for once. The door closed behind them. I sank into my chair, staring at the table where truth and betrayal still mingled like dust in the air. For the first time, I didn't feel like the fixer. I felt like the foundation finally holding. Outside, the rain started again, soft, steady, cleansing, and somewhere deep in the house, a clock began to tick. The next morning, sunlight pushed through the stained glass windows, scattering amber and crimson across the walls like the house was blessing me for surviving the storm. My coffee tasted different that day, not sweeter, just cleaner. Evelyn called to confirm the deed transfer had been processed. The side lot's officially yours, she said. You could sell it to the Millers next door. They've been asking for years. I looked out the window at the rain-soaked street, nodded to myself. Sell it, I said. Let it cover what's left. She hesitated. And the rest? I don't need the rest, I said. I just need truth on paper. After she hung up, I stood in the quiet. No voices echoing in my head, no one tugging on my time, my money, or my guilt. Just silence, and for once, it didn't feel lonely. Later that evening, Sienna showed up unannounced. Her car was smaller now, older. She looked different, hair scraped back, no makeup, exhaustion written in every line of her face. She clutched a small wooden box against her chest. This belonged to Grandpa, she said softly. Dad found it when they were clearing out the attic. Inside was the pocket watch, gold tarnished, chain broken, but still beautiful. The engraving inside read, "For A. C. The one who keeps things running." I traced the letters with my thumb. He meant this for me, I murmured. Sienna nodded. Mom hid it. Said it would just make you dwell on the past. The watch ticked faintly when I wound it. The sound filled the room, soft and certain. Sienna's voice cracked. I'm sorry. For everything. Sorry doesn't rebuild walls, I said. But it's a start. She nodded, tears gathering. What will you do now? I smiled faintly. Sell the lot. Set up college funds for Maya and Theo. Then focus on my own life for once. Her eyes widened. You do that? After everything? I'm done rescuing adults, I said. But kids, they still deserve a chance. She let out a broken laugh. You always were the strong one. No, I said, closing the watch in my palm. I just stopped letting them take the best parts of me. When she left, dusk was settling. I sat by the window, the ticking watch in my hand, the city lights flickering like distant fires. They thought revenge meant destruction. But real revenge is peace and the knowledge that this time, they'll have to fix themselves. If you've ever been the one holding your family together while they tore you apart, you know this kind of silence. It's not the sound of giving up, it's the sound of letting go. I used to think fixing them was my purpose. Now I know walking away is my power. So, tell me, have you ever been the outsider in your own family? Hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe if you've ever learned that peace is the sharpest revenge. Because this story isn't over, and neither is hers.